15-minute window. So I want to return to Ms. Fitzpatrick. Looking at the fact that you said that so far you've been able to meet all contractual supply contracts, but in terms of the situation that we're operating in, has the entire new normal that you're operating in affected BPTT's exploration plans?
The new normal, as you're referring to it, Hema, means that we have to think through how do we execute activity while minimising the spread of the virus so that we're protecting the health and well-being of our people, and also ensuring that people who are at site are able to meet the social distancing requirements. So they are the sorts of principles that we're looking at. Well, what makes sense in terms of activity? We were not planning any exploration activity at this point in time. Therefore, there's been no direct impact to any of those plans.
Now, looking as well, you know, Ms. Fitzpatrick, earlier in an interview, you had said that BPTT, the country's largest gas producer, says it was working on mitigating and slowing the rate of the gas production decline that they forecasted earlier this year. Has BPTT been able to do that in any way?
At the moment, the team have been doing a phenomenal job at managing the decline through what we call two lenses. One is what we refer to as our base production, and that's really making sure that we are maximising the recovery from the existing producing reservoirs. We've also been focusing on, for some of the wells which are not as productive as they maybe could be, what are the interventions that we could make to bring those wells back up to the recovery levels and production levels that we believe they're capable of. And through those two activities, we have been very successful in keeping our production levels up. Now, natural decline will mean that that continues to get harder as time goes on, but at the moment, all the things that we have been looking to do to mitigate the decline that we talked about previously, we have been successful in doing.
Sure, and I want to ask Ms. Enill, you know, at this time, Claire Fitzpatrick talks about the low price environment and this new normal. Do you think that now it may be the best time for NGC to consider options like the methanol to DME plan?
Right now, we are looking at the situation that we find ourselves in. And we're doing some work to try to determine how can we, through the value chain, get more from the molecules that we have. It's an exercise that I think we must do. It's an exercise that we started looking at a little while before this became an issue, because we recognize that the model that we have currently, the aggregation business, the businesses that we are in, really and truly needs to change. We need to become, as we have said, an integrated gas company, and we are doing exactly that. Some of the investments that we have made, some of the things that we are doing, some of the strategic decisions, and some of the strategic partners that we are looking at is in pursuit of that particular objective. You are absolutely correct. What we have before has worked, but we recognize that there has to be a way where we can get more value, and we're doing some work right now, and very shortly we will have the results of that, and that will inform future directions, all intended to increase the revenue stream from the resource that we currently have.
How is the situation hurting the downstream companies?
We were, prior to this situation, in negotiations with the downstream companies, and quite frankly, were able to do enough with both the upstreamers and the downstreamers, and we were able to get them to the stage where at least we had the plants operational. The issue, though, is that both ammonia and methanol prices on a year-on-year basis have dramatically collapsed. And the markets within which we had higher prices have also trended in a similar fashion. When we've looked at some of the other areas, we see similar activities taking place. So our approach has been a renegotiation, if you will, with some of the other players to see whether or not we can, in fact, bring the cost down, whether we can create efficiencies within our own system, and whether we can allow for the downstream sector to at least continue to operate at a level where they can maintain some of the cost structures. At a very large extent, we've been able to do that for some short time.
Now, I do want to ask you, Ms. Enill, you know, you talk about the continuity, and I know Ms. Fitzpatrick is also on the line, but we've been hearing and we've seen so far 2 plants have already been closed in terms of the Point Lisas Industrial Estate. if demand continues to be at where it is, and we're seeing the international movement, do you expect other companies to follow similar suit? And if that is happening, what are you going to do to change that?
Well, business decisions are based on value and investment. And each company is going to look at its global position and decide where it is going to operate from. In the case of the National Gas Company, we will continue to provide the best price to the market on the basis of what we are dealing with. If the company chooses to close, as some have, they're doing so at a time when they believe that maintenance issues can be done at this time, and they're using the time frame to upgrade their plant, upgrade the technology in some instances, to make sure that the safety and the continued productivity of those plants are operational. We have to recognize that this is a cyclical business. And while I hear about prices, we've gone through this before. We've seen this before. We've seen where prices have been low, and organizations have used technology, they've used efficiencies, they've used all kinds of things to bring their cost structure down so that they can become profitable. Sure. I think the same is going to occur. And once companies are profitable, then the taxes that the government expects to run the country will be available. So I don't think...
I don't mean to cut you, Ms. Enill, but I do want to I know we're against the clock, but Ms. Fitzpatrick, looking at what Ms. Enill has just said from the NGC perspective and looking at where the gas prices are, what is the possibility or the likelihood that BPTT will increase gas production anytime soon?
I think, Hema, as we focus on what we've got immediately in front of us in terms of responding to COVID-19 and responding to the price shock and the perfect storm, I think we need to make sure that we're keeping our focus on the immediate of health and well-being of our people, safe operations, to have power to the islands at a minimum, but ideally we want to be keeping our production as stable as we can as we go through this. I think as we're starting to think beyond that, then that will come in time, but I think the key thing at this moment in time is to make sure we're focusing on those two priorities.
What does all of this in the environment mean for Atlantic LNG?
Atlantic are able to kind of respond to the questions themselves, but what we see for Atlantic is they're focusing on driving the efficiency and the safety of their operations, and their primary objective at the moment is also the health and well-being of their people and safe operations. As long as gas is stable, then Atlantic are able to continue on. They, of course, will be interested in any changes in demand from a global perspective and what that would then mean in terms of being able to get the LNG not so much onto the ships, but actually then the ships being able to deliver to markets. That's, I imagine, an area that Atlantic are focusing on. But I do know that they, like ourselves and like NGC and any of the other industry players, the primary focus at the moment is health and well-being of our people and safe operations as we navigate through uncharted waters.
I want to bring Ms. Enill back into the conversation. You know, we're looking at uncharted territory, but we do look at price volatility. If it is that we're looking at the price right now in the U.S. market, which is so depressed, and upstreamers have said that the price locally is so much higher, is it not time, if we're now looking at unprecedented circumstances, that there be some sort of renegotiation with the upstream industry at this time, Ms. Enill?
Well, absolutely. And there's nothing that prevents us from dealing with that, but to a very large degree, it would be an understanding by industry players that in order for the industry to survive, we need to come to an agreement in terms of how that will occur. And as we speak, there are conversations taking place at the level of the government and at the level of the players are aware of this, in which some of those conversations are being had with a view to deciding how we can best serve the industry. None of us would like the industry to be in any state of disrepair. We want to ensure that the industry continues. And in order to do that, there has to be some mature conversations, and there has to be positions that both upstreamers and downstreamers are taking, and we are engaged in those conversations at this point in time.
Now, I know we have a minute to wrap. Ms. Fitzpatrick, your closing comments, and I know people looking at this, BPTT is part of the Trinidad and Tobago culture. When you look at the operations, you said that you've been able to maintain supply and meet all the contractual obligations. Employment levels, will they continue, and BPTT's future in the country? You have 30 seconds.
BPTT still has a strong future in the country. We will come through this strong. It's not an automatic right for us. We will need to be taking some decisive actions to drive efficiency and improvements in our business. In terms of the way forward, it's around, as Mr. Enill said, driving efficiencies into the business so that the value chain is sustainable throughout all of the different price cycles. And it's how do we turn this to an opportunity while not losing sight of the immediate priorities around health and well-being, safety of operations, and also what's our role in supporting the more vulnerable in society here as they also go through this quite challenging time.
Ms. Enill, you have 10 seconds. A closing comments on NGC's part. What would you like to see? NGC is a flagship company in the energy sector. We know that there have been, negotiations have been stalled. We've been hearing all of the concerns from the downstream as well as the upstream. What do you want to leave Trinidad and Tobago with?
The NGC is going forward as an integrated gas company. We are going to be looking at the value chain. We are going to ensure that there is significant value for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. In our planning processes, we were looking at the future. Quite recently, we looked at it and we found that the future that we were looking at is with us now, and we have been able to put in place some of the things that we were looking to do a little bit, at some point in the future. I am very hopeful that NGC and the energy sector will do well. We have the men and women, we have the talent, and we have the experience. I have absolutely no doubt and have faith in their ability to take us through this, and I think we will do that.
I want to thank you both for joining us tonight in this discussion. Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. Our final segment this evening will be with Curtis Williams. Curtis is the editor of the Business Guardian, and all things business in relation to news media he has covered. He specifically looked at the energy sector and called the price right a couple of weeks ago. In fact, pundits on Forbes magazine, they were predicting that maybe oil would plummet to about $20 or even $15. He said, no, I don't really think it's going in that direction, and he proved to be right. We do have an OPEC meeting that's taking place, and we heard from Franklin Cann a short while ago that Trinidad and Tobago is going to be a participant. But looking at the energy sector, really and truly, are we satisfied with where we are, and what can we expect? Curtis, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Hema. Good evening to the viewers.
Now, I know that you've covered a number of topics over the last couple of days, looking at EOG getting higher prices. Also, you say to expect continued low oil prices. You've heard from the stakeholders, the Minister of Energy, you heard from NGC as well as BPTT. In your mind, do we have hope?
Hema, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
All right. What I was saying is that I think that clearly there is going to I think that crude prices are going to remain fairly low for some time to come. And when I say low, I mean $40 to $45 a barrel. And I think I agree with the Minister of Energy that those prices are going to go up next year, probably to $50 to $55 a barrel. But that still leaves the country in some grave difficulties, and the energy sector will remain challenged. I thought the interviews tonight were particularly interesting and reveal a lot of things that we need to follow up on, including, for example, that Heritage Petroleum, which is a state-owned enterprise, is no longer going to be, at this point in time, drilling any wells because of the issue of cost and I guess cash flow, simply because the cost that the price they're getting for their product is so low. And we also learned that the lifting cost is $25 a barrel, which is the cost that they have to spend in terms of when they look at salaries and all the other things that are involved in bringing a barrel of crude to the surface. It's $25, which to me is certainly lower than it was at Petrotrin, but it's a little bit high.
Now, Curtis, listening to what the NGC had to say, and I know that Mr. Enill stayed clear of saying NGC's role in this. He said that there's high-level, mature discussions, and I know Claire Fitzpatrick also, and I didn't really expect it to jump into the conversation, all saying that they are having conversations. But we need to have these conversations now, and they need to be resolved now, because we can't wait. We don't know what we're facing. Are you confident, I mean, you've been covering this, that the players are acting in a mature manner, and this will be resolved soon?
Yeah, but just to give viewers a little bit of background, as we know, two companies have already, that is to say the Yara plant and Titan plants, they've both shut down Point Visa's industrial estate and essentially left. This is because they have been arguing that the price that the NGC wants to sell them natural gas for is too expensive, and that they can't afford to compete with plants in the United States and globally, because the price of their product is so low on the international market, and the major feedstock, which is natural gas in Trinidad, is too high for them. So that background, and the NGC, which is the aggregator, is the sole company really selling to the downstream players. And so there has been this issue between the NGC and the chemical companies overpricing, and the NGC, the chairman admits that this model of an aggregator cannot really work. The NGC cannot continue to rely on making money, buying gas from the upstream, selling it at higher prices to the downstream, and depending upon that margin to make billions of dollars. It has to find a new way. And I think that Mr. Enill should be commended for accepting that the model no longer can continue in the way in which it has operated for many years. It served us well, you know, but at the end of the day, things change, and this is a new time. This is a new normal, as you've been saying. And I commend him and the NGC for realizing that they cannot continue the way they've been going, and the country cannot continue. And we have to find a new way, a new approach, or else we are going to find, as Dr. Terence Farrell warned, that we were at a point of inflection, and we could find ourselves very well losing hundreds of high-paying jobs and millions of dollars in revenue.
You know, everyone, my final question to you, Curtis, is everyone keeps saying that we will ride through this storm. Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector is over 100 years old. There's so much that we have learned from and have gone through in the past. Franklin Cann himself, being a man who came from the sector, as well as Conrad Enill, are both saying that we will get out of this. Do you think that we will get out of it better?
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I'm sure that we will. I think that there will be a life post-coronavirus, post-COVID-19. There's some encouraging signs, certainly on the E&P side. You know, BHP Billiton has said in 2025 they are going to bring on a significant amount of gas with BPTT. We expect BHP as well to bring on about 15,000 barrels of oil, which in the context of Trinidad and Tobago is significant increases. We, as I said to you, while prices are depressed at the moment, we think, and I certainly think, that things will improve. It is going to be slow because the fundamentals tell us that there's an oversupply situation and that there's high production, and therefore there will take some time. It will take some time for us to work through that supply and demand. Even if OPEC agrees to price to cut in production, it will take time for us to work through that amount of oil, and therefore we know that in 12 to 18 months prices are going to be relatively subdued. But prices will rebound. It's a cyclical business, and there is great demand, and as China and India, countries like that, bring people out of poverty and into a better life, they demand more energy, and yes, there's a room for renewables and so on, but oil and gas, and particularly natural gas, will play an important role.
Curtis, I do want to thank you, and I know that we can look forward to all of your articles. Tomorrow, Thursday, is going to be the day that the Business Guardian is putting out their supplement, so definitely something to definitely get your hands on tomorrow. But Curtis, do have a good one, and thank you again for joining us and sharing your expert opinion here this evening. I'm Hema Ramkissoon.
Take care.
Thank you. I'm Hema Ramkissoon, and we've come to the end of this part of navigating the crisis, and we looked at the energy sector. I want to wish you a safe and blessed evening on behalf of the entire team. Thank you again for joining us. And I want to encourage you, Trinidad and Tobago, this is a new normal. Life as we know it will not be the same and cannot be the same again unless we stay home and do the proper thing. The Prime Minister and the government, they have all tried to implement a number of initiatives for us to beat the curve, for us to not be the examples that we're seeing in the US, for us to not be the epicenter in the Caribbean. And the only way that we can do that is by ensuring that we stay at home and we have behavioral change. I want to also commend all the frontline workers who are out tonight making sure that there's a sense of normalcy. Tomorrow we applaud you. It's a gesture that's happening globally, but at 10 a.m. tomorrow, you want to tune into CNC3 from 9:30 a.m., but we definitely will be showing our appreciation. But do have a safe and blessed night.